the home of Lumern Academy. Through the spatial portal, Leo and his group had arrived there. A voice echoed, reminding them, "You have arrived in Lumeria. Please make sure you've gathered all your belongings before leaving the portal." At that moment, Leo's gaze drifted to a collection of grand buildings across the riverbank. And he whispered, "This is the center of the world. Lumeria. And that, right there, is Lumern Academy." At the same time, in front of him, Uncle Z's voice rang out, "Leo, how was your past month?" "Congratulations on passing the entrance exam," he said as he extended his hand for a greeting, which Leo quickly responded to with a handshake. "Thank you, Uncle. But what brings you here today?" Instead of answering directly, Ziz posed a question. "Our family has been embroiled in endless debates for the past month. Do you know why?" Hearing this, Leo immediately understood the issue and replied, "Have they reached a decision on the inheritance of the Phoenix's breath?" "Exactly. Although my sister is no longer a member of the family, you are still her son, and the elders are very impressed that you passed the notoriously difficult exam in the Western region," Ziz explained. He then retrieved a golden key from his pocket and handed it to Leo, adding, "This is a subspace key. Open it." Leo held the key before him and twisted it in the air as if unlocking a door. Before his eyes, a mysterious magic book appeared, radiating an unusually noble aura. Seeing this, Ziz instructed, "Drop a bit of your blood onto the book." Following his uncle's words, Leo bit his fingertip and let a few drops of blood fall onto the book. Instantly, it emitted a brilliant light, and strange, incomprehensible symbols appeared on its pages. "Now, only you can read this book. Mastering the secret techniques of the Zerdinger family is no easy feat, but I have a feeling you will learn quickly. Congratulations on becoming a member of the Zerdinger family," Z said as he gave Leo a reassuring pat on the shoulder. The scene then shifted to a roadside cafe where Leo and Celia had arranged to meet. While Leo wandered around searching for her, he suddenly bumped into a girl about his age, causing the stack of books she carried to scatter across the ground. "I'm sorry. I wasn't paying attention," the girl stammered in panic as she hurried to pick up her books before rushing off. In her haste, she left behind a student ID card, which Leo noticed. "Chloe Muller. A freshman at Lumern Academy," he murmured as he examined the card. Putting the matter aside, Leo made his way into a shop where the swordswoman Celia had been waiting for some time. Seeing him arrive late, she couldn't help but complain. "Leo, you're late. We still need to buy uniforms, textbooks, and a lot more." "I'm sorry. I had to meet with Uncle Z's," Leo apologized. Upon hearing this, Celia's face lit up with excitement. "So, they've made a decision? What's the outcome?" she eagerly asked. Facing Celia's questioning gaze, Leo didn't leave her in suspense for long. He immediately demonstrated his newfound ability. Suddenly, a pair of blazing wings radiating brilliant flames emerged from his back. "Is this how you use it?" Leo asked calmly. Celia, the swordswoman, was so shocked by the display that she dropped everything she had been holding. "Impossible. It took me 3 weeks just to feel the flow of that secret technique." "Leo, who are you really?" she wondered, her mind reeling in disbelief. But it wasn't her fault. Leo was a legendary hero. His vast experience allowed him to grasp advanced techniques effortlessly, without the need for lengthy practice. Time passed quickly, and the scene shifted to a bustling dock. Unlike the old-fashioned sailing ships of the past, this dock featured a massive, modern engine-powered ship. A crowd of new students gathered, ready for the journey ahead. The towering ship left everyone in awe as they gazed around in amazement. "Wow! It's huge!" Exclamations of wonder spread through the group until a professor's voice commanded attention. "Welcome, new students. I am Professor Ina Landu, in charge of the freshman night class. We are departing for Lumern. Everyone, board the ship now," he announced, pointing toward the vessel behind him. With that, the students hurriedly made their way aboard. On board, a lavish dessert banquet awaited them, prepared for the students' enjoyment. As everyone indulged in the sweets, a voice suddenly called out toward Leo and Celia. "Hey, you two, the couple over there. Got a moment?" A young man approached. "My name's Carr Thomas from the Kingdom of Moira. From medicine to weapons, I sell it all. Come to me if you need anything while at school," he said, handing them each a business card. Carr, an alchemist, was known for his wide variety of goods. Across from him, Celia was still annoyed at being called part of a couple. So Leo responded in her place. Pleased to meet you. I'm Leo Pla from the Kingdom of Delad, he said politely. Hearing this, Kar's eyes widened with surprise. Delad? So you passed the Western Region's exam? That's impressive, he remarked with genuine admiration. Setting aside his conversation with Kar, Leo swept his eyes around. Sensing that something was off, his instincts prickled uneasily. Is it just me? Or does this situation feel strange? Everything's too peaceful. It feels wrong, he murmured. In response, Celia let out a sigh and countered. A warm welcome for freshmen who passed the exam. Isn't that perfectly normal? Kar, still munching on a slice of cake, nodded in agreement. Exactly. Why would they treat us harshly before we even start? This is how it should be, he declared confidently. But whether it was pure coincidence or Kar's unfortunate knack for tempting fate, no sooner had the words left his mouth than the entire ship began to shake violently. The sudden tremor was a harbinger of imminent disaster. From the depths of the sea, a massive tentacle burst forth, slamming into the vessel and causing deep cracks to split the deck. The sound of splintering wood was soon drowned out by panicked screams. Professor Ein! Help! Elsewhere on the deck, Professor Ein Alandu observed the chaos with an air of calm indifference. He swirled his wine glass leisurely, completely unfazed by the students' plight. Help! You're all students of Lumern Academy, hero candidates. When danger strikes, it's up to you to overcome it yourselves, he said coldly. Taking a sip of his wine, he cast a casual glance forward. Rising from the sea was a colossal octopus. Its monstrous maw filled with rows of razor-sharp teeth gleaming menacingly under the sunlight. The sudden turn of events enraged Celia, who stomped on the cake in her hand out of frustration. Leo, wielding his sword to sever one of the kraken's tentacles, quickly called out to her. Celia, stay calm. Her eyes flashed with irritation. How about worrying about yourself instead, she retorted as her sword, glowing with a radiant aura, slashed at the monstrous creature. But before she could land a decisive blow, the kraken opened its gaping maw and spewed a powerful jet of water straight at her. The blast drenched Celia from head to toe, leaving her soaked and sputtering. Leo sighed and shook his head. It's basic kraken behavior, it reacts to heat by spraying water. You should know this, he muttered, further fanning her anger. Meanwhile, on the far side of the deck, a random student was ensnared by one of the kraken's tentacles, which coiled around his leg, preparing to drag him into the sea. Damn you! You overgrown octopus! Leo growled, sprinting to the rescue. In a synchronized strike, he and Celia cut the tentacle clean in half, freeing the terrified student. From beneath a table, Kar peeked out at the dazzling teamwork between Leo and Celia. His mouth fell open in disbelief. That's Celia, top of the Western region, but who is this Leo guy? Before he could finish processing the thought, a frozen tentacle suddenly flew past him, nearly knocking him flat. Hey! Watch it, he yelped, glaring at the source. Leo's eyes followed Kar's gaze, landing on the girl he had bumped into earlier. She was now wielding powerful ice magic, launching deadly projectiles at the kraken. The force behind her attacks was anything but ordinary. Kar, still grumbling, called out again. If you can't defend yourself, why not stay out of the fight? The girl snapped, her tone as cold as her magic. He could only sigh in resignation. Great. The strong never care if we get caught in their battles. As if to prove his point, another severed tentacle came flying straight at him. Kar barely dodged it, looking like a magnet for stray attacks. The culprits this time were a pair of siblings, Abad and Chelsea, who stepped onto the scene with confident smirks. The contest isn't over yet. Celia Zerdinger. Abad taunted. Feelings mutual. Celia shot back, her voice laced with annoyance as she braced herself for the next clash. As the students fought valiantly against the kraken, Professor Ein remained unfazed, leisurely sipping his wine, while pouring another glass. He muttered to himself. There are so many monsters in the lake leading to Lumern Academy. A kraken is just perfect for a welcome party. His gaze narrowed slightly as he observed the standout individuals in the group. As expected, the prominent captains, Chen Xia from the east, Celia Zerdinger and Abad Llewellyn from the west, Chloe Mueller from the north, Walden Tyden from the south, and Duran from central. This year's freshmen are impressive. But the one who caught my attention the most is the unidentified student. His sword skills have no unnecessary moves, and his movements suggest he can almost predict the kraken's actions. I'll meet him in the night class. Ein mused. A smile of anticipation playing on his lips. With the collective strength of these exceptional individuals, it didn't take long for the Kraken to succumb to their combined assault and admit defeat. Soon after, the ship carrying them to Lumern Academy docked. As they disembarked, the students were immediately hit by the roughness of the ride. Many of them gagging and looking pale, as if they'd exhausted every bit of their travel sickness medicine. Ugh. I swear I've used up all my meds. Carr muttered under his breath. Professor Ein casually jumped from the bow of the ship to the ground below, addressing the group. You'll have to cross this lake many times, so you might as well get used to it quickly. Now, let's head to the orientation hall. The scene shifted to Lumern Academy's Elikra training grounds. The new students were gathered there, surrounded by onlookers who seemed to be assessing them, looking for the most promising among them. See? I told you. No one's ordinary. I'm hoping for some interesting people this year. Murmurs started to ripple through the crowd. Ignoring the chatter, Professor Ein stepped forward and called out. Let's begin the orientation ceremony now. Form lines by region, with the highest scorers at the front of each row. The headmaster will give a few words first. Hearing the request, the group of students quickly lined up as instructed. Once they were settled, the old man, Headmaster Kallian, stepped forward to give his speech. You've come here with hopes of becoming heroes, and I have only a few words for you. If you dream of becoming heroes, always put yourselves first and push beyond your limits. Those who cannot do this do not belong here. Without missing a beat, Kallian raised his hand and smashed the podium before him, causing it to shatter into pieces. His violent act left the students below completely silent, none daring to speak, not even a clap. Noticing the lack of response, Kallian became somewhat awkward and muttered, "Did I say too much?" At this, the students snapped back to attention, erupting in loud cheers. The headmaster's face brightened, but hearing the relatively small volume of the applause, he casually remarked, "I didn't hear anything." The professors standing behind him fell into a stunned silence. The longer they taught at Lumern, the more the great image of the headmaster seemed to crumble. Yet his humor never failed to make an impression. Ignoring the oddity of the situation, the announcer then spoke up. Next, we'll have a speech from the representative of the freshmen. The representative is Leo Plav. Please come up to the stage. Leo, surprised to find himself chosen as the representative, immediately looked over at Professor Albi. Their eyes met, and the handsome professor smiled and gave a subtle nod of approval. With no other option, Leo reluctantly stepped forward to give his speech. Fortunately, the school had already prepared a speech for him, and he read aloud. To the professors and fellow students, we, the freshmen, will enter Lumern as proud members of this academy. He finished with a brief, "Thank you," closing the book in his hands. He stepped back to leave, but the announcer didn't let him off the hook just yet. "Thank you, Leo. Now, please tell us your goals as the representative of the freshmen." Leo, hearing this, quickly guessed the school's intentions. They wanted him to provoke those who almost got the position instead of him. Right? Leo, with a fearless attitude, stood tall and confidently addressed everyone, his voice filled with challenge. "Hello, I'm Leo Plav, the representative of the freshmen. If any of you want this position, come and take it, no matter who you are." His words rang out, defying anyone who doubted him. Behind him, the teachers were stunned, having just 3 seconds ago thought of him as a well-behaved and obedient student. They had expected the entrance ceremony to be peaceful, but Leo's defiant declaration changed the atmosphere entirely. The scene shifted to the late afternoon, where the freshmen were guided to their dorms at Lumern Academy. The guide spoke to them. "You've all worked hard today. Starting tomorrow, the exploration classes will begin. During this week, no matter what major you want to pursue, you can attend any class of your choice. By the end of this time, you will select 3 subjects to specialize in. Now, get a good night's sleep so you're not late for your first class." Back to Leo's room. Just before entering, Carr waved him off. "Leo, our rooms are next to each other. I'm really looking forward to tomorrow. Sleep well." Leo nodded and replied, "See you tomorrow?" Once inside his room, Leo tossed his suitcase on the bed and collapsed onto it, not even bothering to change clothes. However, Leo wasn't being careless, he had something important to check. As he closed his eyes, his consciousness shifted into a vast space that resembled an enormous library, filled with countless books stacked around him. What I hope to find here at Lumern is something important. I hope to find it here. My hero's journal. Leo thought, the goal driving him in his quest for knowledge and power. As the morning passed quickly, the scene shifted to the dining hall. Leo was enjoying his meal alone when his friend Car appeared, carrying a tray of food 3 times larger than a normal person's, and sat beside him, offering, Leo, let's eat together. Leo, not minding the company, agreed. Sure. However, just as his words ended, trouble arrived in the form of another tray placed right in front of him, accompanied by a loud voice. Freshman representative. Did you really mean what you said in your speech yesterday? The owner of the voice was one of the notable individuals that Professor Ein had noticed, Duran Moira from the Central Region. His meal was fairly normal, except for a tiny flag stuck on his hamburger, likely meant for the younger students to play with. Meanwhile, Leo, sitting opposite Duran, calmly continued eating, seemingly unaware of the irritation coming from Duran. I guess my words yesterday were pretty provocative. Huh? Leo remarked, unbothered. Well, if a stranger comes in and causes a scene like that, I guess it's not surprising. The more calm Leo appeared, the angrier Duran got. His eyes widened as he leaned in and retorted. You don't know who I am, do you? I'm the captain of the Central Region. On the opposite side, Leo and Car continued to ignore him, enjoying their meal as if Duran were just a clown desperately trying to get attention but being completely ignored. Unable to contain his rage any longer, Duran unleashed a burst of lightning, kicking his food into the air. His tray, along with Leo's, was sent flying into the air. But this was not enough to disturb Leo. With exceptional dexterity, Leo's arms moved like a machine, catching all the food back into his plate without dropping a single piece. In fact, he even helped Car catch his food as well. Not only that, Leo casually stuffed some extra ingredients into his hamburger, crafting a deluxe double cheeseburger. Throwing away such a fine meal is unforgivable, Leo said with a slight smile. Seeing his attempt to provoke Leo fail, Duran completely lost his composure. I'll drag you down from your golden throne right now. I can't stand seeing someone weaker than me act so arrogantly. Duran snarled, his teeth grinding. But before the confrontation could escalate further, a large hand suddenly rested on both of their shoulders, stopping them in their tracks. The person who arrived was Professor Ein, and with a cold tone, he addressed the disorderly behavior in the cafeteria. We'll see. One of you is the captain of the Central Region, and the other is the freshman representative, quarreling on the first day at Lumern. I suppose you're both ready for what's to come. His voice carried a dangerous edge, causing both Duran and Leo to unconsciously swallow nervously, realizing the gravity of the situation. Time passed quickly, and the scene shifted to the night's exploration class. The students who were interested in the course had been waiting for a while, but Professor Ein didn't begin the lesson or explain anything, which made one of the students, a brown-haired boy, raise his hand with a puzzled expression. Excuse me, Professor, but class is about to start. At the same time, Celia, the swordswoman, also wondered why Leo hadn't arrived yet. As if answering their unspoken questions, Leo and Duran finally stumbled into the classroom, looking as though they had just completed 10 laps around the school grounds. Seeing Leo drenched in sweat, Celia rushed over to ask, Leo, what happened? Did you get into a fight? Leo didn't explain much and merely glanced at Duran with a slightly amused look. After everyone had gathered, Professor Ein finally began the class. Now that everyone's here, let's start the lesson. Welcome, freshmen. I am Ein Elandu, in charge of the first-year Knights course. In the front row, Duran, still seething over the incident with Leo, couldn't help but glance at him with a glare full of hostility. This made Car sense that something interesting was about to unfold in the class. Oh, looks like they've already started a psychological battle, he thought to himself. Professor Ein continued without paying attention to the rivalry in the classroom, explaining the lesson. The 3 powers of mana, magical energy, soul energy, and the aura field. Of these, the aura field is the most difficult to control. Does anyone know why? Celia, the swordswoman, quickly answered the professor's question. It's because the aura field reduces the flexibility of mana during the transformation process. Professor Ein gave her an approving glance and nodded. Exactly. While magical energy and soul energy use mana in its pure form, the aura field absorbs mana and processes it to suit the body. Now, Can anyone explain how we use the accumulated aura field in our bodies? As he spoke, a radiant glow began to emanate from his body. Celia, despite her skill, was unsure of the exact answer. Isn't it just a matter of applying some force? She thought to herself. When no one else answered, Leo spoke up, taking the initiative for everyone. We use the aura field by burning mana. Professor Ein's face showed a hint of surprise and he nodded approvingly. Correct. Now, do you know the most important thing when burning mana? It's endurance. Leo explained once more. As Ein listened, his expression began to change, gradually becoming more impressed. Impressive. Leo Plov. Have you studied aura fields before? Leo shook his head, causing the professor's evaluation of him to rise even higher. You've never formally studied aura fields, yet you're able to grasp its essence. Interesting. Professor Ein thought, a small smile spreading across his face. Well then, let's set the theory aside for a moment. How about we try moving our bodies a bit? With that, he focused his energy into his feet. To the astonishment of all the students, the professor's steps seemed to tread on the air as though walking on solid ground. This is the step of the aura field. The basic principle is to concentrate the power of the aura field into your feet, and its potential applications are limitless. Time passed quickly, and the students began to pair up and practice the mysterious technique. However, it wasn't easy, and most of them struggled to master it. The only exception was Celia, the so-called genius. She had managed to grasp the technique fairly well and, turning to Leo, she smirked. Hee hee. I'll show you how to do it if you call me sister. Leo, with his calm demeanor, glanced at Celia and dismissed her offer. No need. The principle behind the aura field isn't much different from basic stuff. He wasn't interested in learning from her, as he already had a good grasp of the concept. Meanwhile, Professor Ein had noticed Duran's intense gaze focused on something, which led him to smile as if coming up with an interesting idea. He clapped his hands to grab everyone's attention. As you all know, there was a bit of a disturbance earlier today. Chessie, the sorceress, seemed confused, asking, "What are you talking about, Professor?" Professor Ein then gestured for both Leo and Duran to step forward. He turned to Duran and asked, "Duran Moira, what's made you so upset?" Duran replied with a feigned calmness. "I'm not upset," but he couldn't even meet the professor's eyes. Ein, without needing further explanation, already guessed the cause. He decided to give both of them a chance to settle things with a race. Let's take this outside then. Duran Moira, the team captain of the Central Region, and Leo Plov, the representative of the new students, will have a one-on-one race to decide who will represent the class. You can use your aura field without any restrictions in this race. Duran looked momentarily startled, but then carved the businessman, eagerly stepped forward with a banner and started making bets. Come on, place your bets. The genius of the Moira family, heir to the heroes, Duran Moira, master of the Thunder Aura Field, versus the underdog from the suburbs, Leo Plov, who's already conquered the leaders of every region and become the representative of the new students. Elsewhere, the students were gossiping among themselves. I mean, he's the new student representative, so he has to show something, right? From what I saw when he talked to Celia Zertinger, it doesn't even look like he can use the aura step. Did you hear what he did yesterday? I can't stand him. Becoming the team captain of the Central Region isn't something just anyone can do. Unlike this new student representative who hasn't proven anything. Various murmurs of doubt started circulating. Professor Ein ignored the whispers and saw that both Leo and Duran were now in position. He called out, "All right, the first one to cross the finish line wins. Whoever wins, you must accept the result gracefully. That's what true knightly spirit is about. Get into position." Celia, despite her logic telling her that Leo wouldn't win, had an inexplicable feeling that things might turn out differently. Honestly, Leo won't win, but he has this way of always exceeding people's expectations. The professor shouted, "Go," and with that, both Leo and Duran pushed off with all their might, racing toward the finish line. Next, it wasn't really surprising when Duran, with the advantage of using his air step, surged ahead. "I'll go ahead, newbie," he mocked, and then shot forward like a rocket. Seeing his speed, everyone couldn't help but be impressed. "Wow, just as expected from Duran. So cool," they said. As for the first-year representative, while speaking, everyone turned to look at Leo and subtly shook their heads. I can't believe it. He's really bad, they murmured. Just as predicted. That guy being the representative is a scam. This is unacceptable. Nearby, the mage Chelsea noticed that no one was showing any respect to Leo. So she shouted loudly to cheer him on. Leo, go for it. Back on the track. With his lightning speed, Duran had already covered half the distance. Seeing the current result, Carr couldn't help but worry for his new friend. Duran had already gone halfway, while Leo, of course, realized this. So, as he reached the bend, Leo suddenly slammed the brakes. Then, for reasons unknown, he concentrated his strength into the soles of his feet and launched himself off the ground, leaving the track behind. Chelsea looked on with confusion, unable to understand what Leo was doing. From their perspective, the main character kept jumping and shooting upwards, eventually stopping to observe Duran running ahead. He focused all his strength into his legs and executed a burst of speed. His jump was so powerful that it cracked the ground beneath him, and his body sped forward faster than a rocket. As he zoomed past Duran, he couldn't resist taunting him. I'm ahead now. You slowpoke. Just like that. While Duran was still trying to figure out what had happened, Leo had already reached the finish line. And it wasn't just Duran who was stunned, everyone who had mocked Leo earlier was left dumbfounded, shocked and astonished. Did you see that? This is no joke. Duran, who was supposed to be the fastest of the first-year students, actually lost to him, one of them said. But I'm sure he's never learned the air step technique. The group looked at each other in confusion after witnessing Leo suddenly accelerate so fast. Meanwhile, Celia, the swordswoman, was different from the rest. She had realized the technique Leo had used earlier wasn't the air step, it was the phoenix step. In the corner, the goldfish brain duo, Chelsea and Carr, didn't think too much about it, they were just happy Leo had won and cheered for him. As for Professor Ayan, with his experience, he was the one who could see the most. Duran had used his signature thunderous air step to increase his speed, and I had expected that. But the speed was truly astonishing. Meanwhile, although Leo Plov was slower, he had better control. He focused all his fire aura into his legs and created a formidable step. An excellent application. In the current generation, perhaps a true hero has finally emerged, he said with a hopeful smile. Meanwhile, after winning, Leo went over to greet his opponent. Great match. Duran. If it were a long race, the result might have been different, he said, extending his hand. However, Duran, still too proud to show a pleasant face to Leo, shoved his hand away and sneered. Get lost. You loser. Despite Duran's unpleasant words, the mage Chelsea ran over to Leo with admiration in her eyes. Leo, you're amazing. I want to train with you too. Looking at her gaze, Carr seemed confused, not understanding why she was so infatuated with Leo instead of him. But why is she so taken with him and not me? She should pay attention to me too, he muttered. Of course she does, Celia replied, giving Carr a look as if she was staring at an idiot. Anyway, now that class is over, let's go to the cafe. My treat, Carr happily suggested. It seemed he had earned some money from the earlier bet. However, Leo gently declined the offer. Sorry, but you guys go ahead. Where are you going? Carr asked curiously. I'm going to the summoning class, the protagonist straightforwardly shared. Hearing this, the orange-haired guy was baffled. Why would a student from the swordsmanship department go to the summoning class? In response, Celia could only sigh in frustration. I don't understand what he's thinking either. Back to Leo. As he was on his way to the summoning class, he was deep in thought, pondering something that still confused him. There was one thing he couldn't understand. Why had the Fairy King given him a vow as a reward? A reward from the world of heroes, connected to the power of its master. The reward he received had something to do with summoning. But Professor Albi was a pure mage with no connection to summoning. Normally, he would have received a skill related to magic. Furthermore, to form a pact with a spirit being, he would have to go to the land of spirits. Right now, it would be useless. Leo murmured to himself before being awakened by a girl's voice. So, you came to attend the summoning class too? Upon hearing this, Leo turned around and saw the person who had called him, Chen Xia, the captain of the Eastern team. She was 17 years old. Seeing that Leo had noticed her, Chen Xia nodded and greeted him. Nice to meet you, Leo. Leo responded with a smile. Nice to meet you too, Chen Xia. You can just call me Xia, she said, waving her hand before turning to ask why Leo was there. I'm sure you're a student from the swordsmanship department. So I didn't expect you to be interested in summoning. Well, I'm interested in spiritual studies. Leo explained to brush it off. In that case, we'll be seeing each other often. Chen Xia said lightly. Then, Leo asked her if she could tell him which spirit she had formed a pact with. Without hesitation, Chen Xia summoned her water elemental spirit for Leo to see. It seemed to be a water-type spirit. Now, show me your spirit. Chen Xia requested. I haven't formed a pact yet. Leo explained. Which caused Chen Xia to be a bit surprised. Really? Well, if you ever need help, feel free to ask me. I can offer some advice on summoning spirits. Alright, I'll remember that. But how old are you? Leo asked curiously. I'm 17 years old. Leo, you're 15, right? I heard you talking with Celia, she replied. Hearing her age, Leo couldn't help but exclaim in his mind. 17 years old? She really looks much younger. She even looks younger than Chelsea. As he thought about this, he realized that Chen Xia was staring at him with a look of suspicion. Then, as if she had a woman's intuition, she asked, Did you just think something rude? Didn't you? No, not at all. Leo said quickly, glancing in another direction. Forget about this. Chen Xia said with a gentle smile before suggesting. But anyway, Leo, I was really impressed with your match against Duran. One day, please accept my challenge. In response, our protagonist was never afraid of any challenge. So he smiled and accepted. Of course. The scene then shifts to the summoning class. Upon arriving, Leo was a bit surprised by the small number of people in the class. Is this all? He wondered. Behind him, Chen Xia answered, looking a bit awkward. Well, summoning isn't a popular choice. And this is just an exploratory class. But it is surprising to see the class being held here. Leo muttered, looking at the lesson taking place in this grassy field. I didn't expect a class to be held here. Suddenly, a huge shadow appeared overhead, causing the group to panic. A black dragon. Where did it come from? One student screamed in fear as the dragon stared at them. Seeing their frightened reactions, a female voice spoke to explain. It's here because it likes you. Kid. Nice to meet all of you first-year students. My name is Yura Marin, and I will be your summoning teacher for the upcoming year. Around her, the male students couldn't help but stare at her beautiful face and her vibrant, youthful figure. Their hearts raced with excitement. I want to become her spirit beast, the group dreamed aloud. Not even considering the others. Even Leo had to admit her beauty. If Dueno were here, he'd definitely go crazy. Leo thought to himself, recalling his friend's womanizing ways in his past life. Facing Professor Yura. After waiting for the group to settle down a bit, she finally spoke to begin the lesson. Alright, rookies. The fact that you are here proves you have some talent in summoning. Am I right? Yes, the entire group shouted in unison, making her quite satisfied. Good. That's a loud and clear answer. We'll head straight to the practice area, she continued. Then, Yura turned to remind her assistant. Carlo, a white-haired young man with glasses, led a griffin to assist the students. He was the teaching assistant for the first-year summoning class. Seeing that the transportation was ready, Yura continued. You'll ride in pairs. 2 people per griffin. Now, get on. Hearing her instructions, one student hesitantly spoke up. Professor, this is the first time we're riding a griffin, he said, his eyes full of hope for guidance. Unfortunately, his plea was entirely dismissed. What he received was nothing more than an angry glare from Yura. So, are you saying you don't want to listen to my lesson? If you think you can't do it, then turn back now. With that, she quickly mounted her black dragon and took off, leaving the bewildered students behind. It was Carlo who eventually stepped in to encourage everyone. Come on, follow the professor. Surprisingly, riding the griffins turned out to be easier than the students had feared. Chen Xia eagerly partnered with Leo. Leo, can I hold the reins of the griffin? She asked. Although Leo seemed a bit surprised, he agreed. Sure, hold them as long as you want. With a bit of practice, the group soon caught up with their professor. Only when they felt the fresh sea breeze blowing against their faces did they realize the joy of having a mount. Wow! I can't believe we're riding griffins. This really is Lumern level quality. Hey, switch with me. I want to fly too. Just a little longer. Come on. The sounds of friendly squabbles filled the air. Meanwhile, Chen Xia couldn't hide her excitement. I was a little nervous. But it's much gentler than I thought. Hearing that, Leo reminded her. Be careful. Griffins are tricky to control for beginners. Upon hearing these words, Chen Xia couldn't suppress her curiosity. Huh? But it looks so gentle. That's because, Leo began to explain. However, before he could finish, Professor Yura, who was standing in front, suddenly took out a whistle and blew into it with puffed cheeks. The sound was so loud and piercing that it made everyone uncomfortable. The moment the sound reached their ears, the demeanor of the griffins changed completely, becoming aggressive and far more difficult to control. This isn't good. They're not listening anymore. What's happening? Professor, help us, the group cried out in panic. But Yura made no move to offer assistance. Instead, she stayed firmly seated and crossed her arms, calmly instructing. Do you really think you deserve to be students of Lumern Academy if you can't control a simple griffin? Handle it yourselves. Meanwhile, Chen Xia, riding with Leo, was just as flustered when her mount suddenly turned unruly. Seeing her distress, Leo gently placed his arm around her waist, clasped her hand, and guided her carefully. Griffins have a very strong sense of pride. Trying to force them into submission will only make them more rebellious, he explained softly. Liu, what are you doing? Chen Xia stammered, her face turning as red as a ripe tomato. Unfazed by her embarrassment, Leo calmly took hold of the reins and gradually gained control of the griffin. Up we go, he commanded. As if responding to his calm authority, the griffin immediately steadied itself and surged forward with renewed speed. Even Yura, watching the scene unfold, couldn't help but praise him. Well done. Not bad at all. She then turned to her assistant. Carlo, isn't the first-year representative from the engineering department? Yes, that's right. Carlo confirmed after a quick glance at his notes. Does he have his own griffin at home? Otherwise, how is he riding so well? Yura asked. Intrigued, Carlo shook his head. No, he's not from any noble family with griffins. At this, Yura's eyes sparkled as if she had just won a lottery. Natural talent, she mused aloud. It looks like we've discovered a hidden gem. Stroking her chin thoughtfully, she smiled with a look of growing admiration. The scene shifts to Summoning Island, the designated practice area for the summoning department. At this moment, most of the students were sprawled across the sandy shores, feeling dizzy and nauseous after the arduous task of riding griffins to reach this destination. While they were still reeling from motion sickness, Leo took the opportunity to wander around, curious to see what interesting things this place had to offer. As he explored, a peculiar fruit caught his eye, prompting him to pluck it from a nearby branch. However, what truly drew his attention was not the fruit itself but the feather stuck to it. A star feather. Leo whispered to himself, examining it closely. Noticing the odd expression on his face, Chen Xia asked, "What's the matter, Leo?" "Ah, it's nothing," Leo replied, shaking his head with a faint smile. Elsewhere, Professor Yura, far from letting her students fully recover, raised her voice and barked out an order. "Stop dawdling and pay attention. Starting now, you will take a practical test." The students' eyes widened in shock as collective groans filled the air. What? A practical test on the first day? But we just got here. Isn't this supposed to be an orientation class? A student with a middle-part hairstyle protested. In response, Yura sighed and began explaining in a matter-of-fact tone. Compared to other disciplines, the path of a summoner is far more challenging. Is there anyone here who doesn't understand that? For a summoner, controlling mana alone is not enough. To forge a contract with a spirit, you must harmonize with its essence. To command summoned creatures, you need mastery over taming techniques. That's why the number of summoner heroes is much smaller than that of other departments. However, she paused, her gaze sweeping over the students. Those few who reach the pinnacle of summoning accomplish far greater feats than most others. Isn't that why you all chose this path, to become that kind of hero? A silver-haired girl stepped forward, her expression resolute. Yes, she affirmed firmly. So, what's the test? This girl was Eliza Herjin, a member of the prestigious Herjin family of summoning heroes from the north. Yura glanced at her briefly before continuing her explanation. This island is called Summoning Island for a reason. It's teeming with summoned creatures. Summoning is your weapon. And your test is to demonstrate your taming ability. It's simple, she declared with a grin. Tame one summoned creature from the forest and bring it back. Once you've tamed and formed a contract with it, that creature will belong to you. The students' eyes lit up with excitement. The possibility of gaining a personal creature on their very first day sent their enthusiasm skyrocketing. Wow! Lumern Academy is the best, someone shouted. Without wasting another moment, the entire group dashed eagerly into the forest, each one determined to find the perfect pet to claim as their own. As Leo prepared to move deeper into the forest in search of a suitable summoned creature, a voice suddenly called out behind him. Well, the first-year representative, Eliza said, a faint smirk playing on her lips. Words spreading fast about how you defeated Duran. Should I expect anything impressive from you in summoning class? I'm just doing my best, Leo replied coolly, without turning his head. He kept walking forward, his pace steady and determined. Behind him, Eliza's eyes narrowed, her brows knitting together as a hint of irritation flashed across her face. Meanwhile, Professor Yura, watching from a distance, couldn't help but smile inwardly. Looks like these students will be key players among the first years, she mused. Time passed swiftly. Several students had already begun forming bonds with their summoned creatures, proudly taming and befriending the mystical beings they encountered. However, Leo continued to wander deeper into the forest, his eyes scanning for the right target. Look! Someone tamed a creature, a student exclaimed, pointing toward the forest. Isn't that the first-year representative? Another remarked. But, isn't he going too far into the woods? Someone shrugged dismissively. Whatever. If he fails to tame something and gets a 0, he'll just crawl back to the night department where he belongs. Summoning isn't as easy as he thinks. Ignoring the murmurs and whispers, Leo pressed on, venturing farther into the depths of the forest. When he finally felt certain no one else was nearby, he stopped. He reached into his pocket, pulling out the star feather he had picked up earlier. Holding it firmly in his hand, he summoned his fire aura, channeling its intense heat to ignite the feather. Haha, just as I thought. A grin spread across his face. However, before he could finish his thought, a powerful explosion erupted behind him. The ground shook violently, and the blast sent a wave of scorching heat across the area. Meanwhile, at a distant campsite, Lady Reyna sat near a fire, her expression tense and full of worry. Will Leo be all right? She whispered, her fingers tightening around a cup of tea. A companion beside her set down a plate of food and chuckled softly. It's only the first few days of school. Reyna, you're already fretting this much? I know, but nothing bad will happen. Right? Reyna replied uncertainly, accepting the cup of water with a sigh. Little did she know, her concern wasn't misplaced. Far away, her son was indeed in serious trouble of the highest order. The ground beneath Leo trembled as he stared ahead, his eyes wide in astonishment. The searing heat, that power? One of the 3 legendary summons, he muttered, his breath caught in his throat. The Phoenix. In front of Leo, a deep, commanding voice echoed through the blazing heat. Just the child of Zerdinger. Are you? I smell the fiery aura of Reyna. Leo's eyes lit up with curiosity. You know my mother? The voice softened, a hint of fondness seeping through. Your mother, you say? Then I wasn't mistaken. Yes, if she had a child. They'd be around your age by now. Do I know her? Of course. I do. I owe Reyna a great debt. The speaker revealed itself, an awe-inspiring phoenix wreathed in flames, its radiant feathers glowing with an almost otherworldly fire. Its name was Farina, one of the 3 legendary spirit beasts. Her gaze, filled with a mix of warmth and power, settled on Leo. My name is Farina, son of Reyna. Leo responded respectfully. Greetings, Phoenix Farina. I am Leo Plav. What connection do you have with my mother? You mentioned that you owe her. At his question, Farina's eyes flickered with the light of distant memories. Her tone turned reverent as she began recounting her tale. Reyna saved the life of my summoner, Hélène Lunda. It was many years ago when Ellen was exploring a treacherous dungeon in Siren. She had lost all her comrades and faced death itself. Your mother appeared and rescued her. But in doing so, she lost her blazing aura, her most powerful asset. Had it not been for that sacrifice, Reyna would have ascended to the rank of a true hero. Leo's heart clenched as he listened, sadness creeping into his expression. Yet, he spoke with quiet conviction. My mother told me she never regretted that decision. Not even for a moment. Ha? Farina blinked. Then let out a soft laugh. Of course. That's Reina, always the selfless knight. Leo's curiosity piqued again. What brings you here to this island? Farina. The phoenix's expression grew guarded, and her blazing eyes narrowed slightly. That? I cannot tell you, child. However, she quickly shifted her attention back to him. But you, are you not a knight? Why are you here in a summoning class? I'm learning to be a summoner. Leo stated simply. Farina stared at him in stunned silence before bursting into laughter. Her flames dancing with her mirth. How amusing. Truly fascinating. Leo Plov. This must be fate. At last. I can repay my debt to your mother. Extending one of her fiery wings, she gestured toward a radiant, golden object. Take this. Leo. Vitreverence. She presented him a gleaming egg that shone with a majestic, golden light. This is my child. One day, when you become a great summoner, I hope you will form a contract with it. The summoner originally destined for this companion has lost their right. Now, it belongs to you. The egg radiated immense heat and power. A gift of extraordinary significance. Glowing with the promise of untold potential. Back to the main character. After hearing Farina's words, he immediately asked, Can I do this right now? Farina, seeing his determination, froze for a moment before quickly warning him. It's still too early. You could lose your life. Stop. Oh no, it's too late. Farina sighed, her gaze softening as she spoke. Your readiness to challenge the impossible without hesitation reminds me of Reina. I wish you luck. Back to Leo. At this point, his consciousness was transported into a dark space. In front of him, a flickering flame emitted a warm glow. Leo, upon seeing it, reached out and gently touched the flame. The moment his hand made contact, the flame erupted violently, engulfing his body in a fiery vortex. The heat is unbearable. This is the phoenix flame. Leo thought. To create such a powerful fire, we must endure this pain daily. A creature that lives by eternally regenerating its burnt flesh. I understand your pain and share it with you. Leo whispered to himself, as if sensing his thoughts. The flame gradually weakened and became much gentler. At the same time, outside the dark space, the egg cracked, revealing fissures along its surface. It then detached from Leo's hand and slowly floated into the air, drawing all the surrounding flames into itself. Have you succeeded? Farina's voice asked. I did it. Leo smiled, responding with pride. Farina beamed with joy. You're a genius. Leo Plov. You will become the greatest summoner in the world, she praised. Congratulations on successfully forming the contract. This child's name is Fiora. I entrust my child to you. Farina's smile was warm, but it carried a bittersweet sentiment of maternal love. The newborn had barely felt the warmth of its mother for 3 seconds before being handed off to someone else. Looking at the phoenix in front of him, Leo felt a bit puzzled. Is this really the phoenix? Why does it look more like a chick, he wondered to himself. The tiny chick, still in its naive state, chirped twice, looking at Leo with curious eyes, further confirming his suspicion. This is definitely a chick. The scene shifts to Professor Yura, who was observing the students as they returned with their summoned creatures. After taking a quick glance at the students, she turned to ask her assistant, Carlo, what time is it? Carlo immediately understood the situation and replied, 5 more minutes. Only 4 left. No sooner had he finished speaking, heavy footsteps echoed from the distance, grabbing the attention of the professor. Approaching them was a gigantic black bear, the summoned creature of one of the students. Professor, you're not finished yet, are you? The student, looking a bit ragged, spoke as if she had gone through quite a struggle to tame the bear. But the results were impressive. Even Professor Yura complimented her. You tamed a water bear as an apprentice knight? Impressive. At the same time, Walden, the big guy, was clinging to the legs of a massive bird, which landed heavily on the ground. Is that a shadow raven? Professor Yura asked, her voice filled with admiration. That's a spirit beast that even famous summoning families struggle to tame. However, Walden quickly clarified. I haven't contracted with it yet. That's good enough. More than enough. Yura waved her hand dismissively. Next, Eliza rode back to the gathering spot on top of a massive white serpent, drawing awestruck looks from the others around her. I've already contracted with it. My family didn't have one of these, she said nonchalantly. Recognizing the creature, Yura couldn't help but praise. A Gorgon serpent? Fantastic. Nearby, Carlo reminded her. Professor, time's up. At that moment, the final student was arriving. Everyone turned their attention to the back, and they saw Leo slowly emerging from the forest. What stood out was the tiny chick on his head. Seeing it, the students couldn't help but laugh. Haha, what's this? He tamed a chicken. What a fool. He probably gave up once he realized he couldn't summon anything decent. Contrary to the students' mocking thoughts, as soon as Professor Yura sensed the aura emanating from the chick, her eyes widened in shock. Damn it! That little monster? That's a phoenix. Time quickly passed, and the scene shifts to Professor Yura's office. Leo was called in for a private meeting with her. Outside the door, Leo adjusted his clothes to make sure he looked neat and then lightly knocked on the door. Inside the office, Yura, aware that Leo had arrived, called out, "Come in." Leo, curious, asked, "I heard you were looking for me." "Sit down," she gestured. Then continued, "You know, I have to say, this is the first time I've seen a phoenix. Honestly, I didn't even know there were phoenixes on the summoning island. And to think a first-year student has contracted with one. This has never happened in the history of the academy." She paused for a moment, her gaze fixing intently on Leo, her voice growing serious as she said, "I know exactly who you are. Leo." On the other side, Leo, hearing this, couldn't help but swallow nervously, worried that his true identity might be exposed. Although he wasn't guilty of anything, the fact that a hero could be reborn after 50 years would undoubtedly attract attention. However, Leo was overthinking it, as Professor Yura immediately embraced him tightly and praised him endlessly. "You are a genius summoner. A never-before-seen talent," she said, with admiration in her voice. "I want to commend you for your achievements. But your contract with the Phoenix must remain a secret. If it's revealed now, things could get unnecessarily chaotic. When the trial classes end, make sure to choose summoning as your major. You have the talent to become a hero of summoners remembered throughout the ages." She said this while gently patting Leo's shoulder, full of trust in him. Time flew by, and the next day, Chloe, the ice mage, was yawning as she walked down the hallway. Leo and Car bumped into her, and Leo teased her. "Your mouth's about to fall off." Chloe, "Haha, you look tired." Chloe, turning around, explained that she had stayed up late reading magic books. At the same time, Leo remembered her student ID and said, "You're Chloe Mueller, right?" He then handed her the ID card. Chloe looked at it and remembered meeting Leo before. "Oh, it's you. Thanks, freshman representative." With that, the three of them walked together into class. Today was the day for the magic trial classes. And Car, curious, asked, "Looks like you'll be joining the magic class." "Huh, Leo? Since we're still in the trial phase, I want to join as many classes as possible," Leo answered calmly, which made Car feel a bit envious of Leo's thirst for knowledge. "That's amazing. As for me, I'm only interested in magic, so I'm only attending the magic class." As they talked, Car suddenly lowered his voice and whispered in Leo's ear, "The Ice Queen is aiming for the peak of the magic department. Her name is Chloe Mueller." Leo glanced over at Chloe, noticing that she was looking at him. This made Car feel a chill running down his spine, and he quickly turned to leave, cheerfully saying, "It's too cold here, isn't it? I think I should move to the back." However, before Car could leave his spot, a sharp ice column suddenly erupted from the ground, blocking his path. The person responsible for this, of course, was Chloe. "Car, come up to the front seat," she said. "It seems like you're interested in the class, so I'll help you out." With that, she grabbed Car by the collar and dragged him along, like pulling a small dog, causing him to silently cry out in frustration. Watching this scene, Leo couldn't help but feel a bit amused. At the same time, the mage duo, Abad and Chelsea, greeted Leo from behind. A few minutes later, the teacher for the class entered through the door, and the appearance of this teacher had all the female students excited. "Oh my God. He's so handsome," they whispered among themselves. Ignoring the chatter, the handsome teacher raised his voice and said, "I will be teaching you magic this year. My name is Lenore." Pausing for a moment, Len lightly tapped a stack of test papers beside him and reminded everyone, Before we begin today's trial class, you'll first be taking a theoretical magic test. With a snap of his fingers, the test papers automatically flew to each student. The fact that they had to take a test before learning anything made the students' minds go blank in confusion. What? A test on the first day of the trial class? Someone exclaimed. Len confirmed with a smile. That's right. If you don't meet certain standards, you won't be allowed to attend my class. If you're a student of Lumern, this level of test should be fine for you. Once you finish the test, submit it to my assistant, Anna, he added. On the other side, Anna, the assistant professor for first-year magic students, waved and greeted the students. Please submit your test papers to me once you're done. As for Leo, looking at the test questions, he felt a heavy weight on his shoulders, his body trembling slightly. This was the first time in the series that he had such an expression. Is this really the current magic trend? Why are the formulas so complicated? Leo silently grumbled to himself. Time quickly passed, and everyone remained focused on their test. After finishing, they realized that the test wasn't as difficult as they had originally thought. This is easier than I thought, one student said. But what's the answer to the last question? I got everything except that one, another chimed in. And the group began to excitedly discuss their answers. Meanwhile, Leo was struggling. His head felt like it was about to explode from overthinking. I only solved one question, he thought, his hands shaking as he handed in his pitiful test to the assistant. I should have studied more magic before coming here. Leo sighed inwardly and quickly left the classroom. With his ancient magic knowledge, attending these classes would only embarrass him. Back with the handsome Professor Len. As soon as he collected the tests, he began grading them on the spot. In the past century, magic had evolved a great deal. What once required perfect understanding now only needed knowledge of the activation conditions to use it. However, this development had led to a decline in the general level of magicians. As he spoke, a beam of light shot out from his palm and soared into the air. The classroom transformed into a vast and mysterious cosmic space. The students gaped in awe at the spectacle before them. Seeing their astonishment, Len didn't leave them in suspense and explained. This is the essence of magic that I created. I made it from the end to the beginning. I want you all to become magicians capable of researching and creating your own magic. Which is why I gave you this test. 49 questions. Each worth 1 point based on simple memorization. And the last question, worth 51 points, analyzes the true essence of magic. I hope that all of you here will be capable of solving it. Back to Chloe. When she looked at her test, she felt a bit embarrassed. It was no surprise that the last question was the only one she couldn't solve. Did Leo give up? She wondered. I really wanted to take the magic class with him. What a shame. At that moment, the teaching assistant, Anna, seemed to have realized something and hurried over to Len, whispering in his ear, Professor, one of the students has solved question 50. Hearing Anna's words, Len's face showed a look of astonishment. Then, he burst out laughing in pure delight. Ha ha ha. Who is it? One of you has achieved a perfect score for the first time in history. Please, stand up. Who is it? Len's face flushed with excitement as he eagerly awaited the reveal. Anna quickly interjected. Professor, that student didn't get a perfect score. Len, still grinning, seemed to brush off the correction, feeling as though it was inevitable. Oh? It seems a few other questions were missed because too much time was spent on the final question. A bit unfortunate. But still good. Come up here. Anna, lowering her voice, clarified. No, they only answered the last question. Len's smile instantly disappeared, and he asked in disbelief. What's their name? Student Leo Plav. Anna responded. Then Leo Plav. Please stand up. Len called out, scanning the room. However, after handing in his test, Leo had already left. Chelsea, a fellow student, spoke up to explain. Leo left after finishing the test. Meanwhile, Leo was happily enjoying ice cream with Celia, recounting the details of his magic test, which made Celia laugh heartily. Haha, so you just left after answering one question? First, you're the summoner with the little chicken, and then you only answered one question in the magic class? Leo, don't you think you're doing something wrong? If you're a knight student, you should focus on your swordsmanship. Leo, a bit irritated, retorted. Well, do you want to practice endurance with me? Celia hesitated, her voice faltering. Well, that's a bit. Just then, Their conversation was interrupted by Professor Lin. So, you're a night student? Are you Leo Plov, the one who disrespected my class? Why did you leave after solving just one question? Was it too easy for you? So you thought it wasn't worth answering? His eyes